36 million people out of work, folks. Come on, man, this is crazy times.
In today's real estate video, I'm gonna be comparing the 2008 Great Recession real estate market crash to the current upcoming real estate market crash that we're likely going to see in the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm gonna give you about 10 different points of comparison, just so you can get an idea of really what we're getting into. I'm gonna show you 10 different stats from the 2008 Great Recession and 10 different stats from the current upcoming market recession. So if you give me about 10 minutes in this real estate video, pretty much tell you everything you need to know. And that being said, let's jump into it. So point number one is the lending standards. Now, obviously in 2008, the lending standards were pretty much, if you had a pulse and you could fill out some basic paperwork, you could get a loan. Now, the lending standards have increased drastically. However, one thing to note is that interest rates right now are in the 2%. They are incredibly historically low, which means there's so many more people that are trying to apply for loans and trying to purchase houses, and it's drastically increasing the prices, and there's just tens of thousands of more buyers out there. So more buyers means more competition, which means higher prices, which also means the likelihood of things going wrong is going to increase. Anytime you have more of anything, there's always going to be that 1% or 2% of people that might default on their loan or have other serious issues. Point number two, the unemployment rate during the Great Recession during 2008 timeframe, that peaked at about 10%. Now, during this pandemic crisis, the unemployment rate has actually been significantly higher than that. It went well over 10%. However, recently and over the last several months, it's gone down and more or less stabilized around 7%. However, with all these shutdowns and all this uncertainty, there's a possibility that even 7-8% is pretty high, and it could drastically increase. There's so much uncertainty going on in the markets and economy right now. Point number three is cash out refinance debts. So during the Great Recession in 2007, I believe cash out refinances peaked at about 90% of the refinances done were cash out, meaning people were basically using their house as an ATM. And I saw it firsthand. I was actually at an eviction where the person had a brand new house, brand new cars. They had different types of boats, or they were like ski-doos and just various different other things, in their parking lot. And, they were using their house as an ATM. And the good thing about the current pandemic crisis is that by most reports, only about 25% of people are using the refinancing to take cash out. So there's a ton of people getting new refinances because the interest rates are insanely low. I just refinanced at like 2.1 or 2.3, something crazy like that. However, most people are using it to save money rather than to take money out. But there's still, about 25-30% of people that could be using their house as an ATM because prices have gone pretty high recently. And a lot of people who might not be expecting to even be able to access that amount of cash now all of a sudden have, maybe $100,000, maybe $200,000 in a home equity line or a cash out refinance that they could use for various things. It could be home improvement, but it could also be, frivolous spending, which, Americans, they love to do a lot of frivolous spending.
It actually makes stupid look like you're doing something good. Like you buy a car you can't afford and everybody thinks you're making it. Look at George. George is doing good. Did you see that car he bought? That job must be kicking it. All George got was a payment coming out of his freaking ear holes. That's all it was. George isn't doing good. George is stupid. That's what he did.
The next point of comparison is the household debt level. So the recent household debt level has actually surpassed household debt levels of the Great Recession. And household debt takes into account a lot of different things, mortgages, credit card, different types of debts like that. And being at record levels for household debt is not a good thing. I don't know if it's going to take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, a couple years, but eventually all that household debt, is going to need to be paid off. A lot of it is mortgages, but just overall from an economic standpoint, being at the highest levels ever of household debt is not a good indication. Next up, we have the actual amount of foreclosures and also properties in forbearance. So during the Great Recession, there was close to 4 million foreclosures. And during the current forbearance crisis, there's about 3 million houses in forbearance, meaning that these people have arranged payments with their lender to catch up eventually on their mortgage. So the CARES Act, which was enacted in March of 2020, has enabled people to basically forego payments and push those payments off to a later date. However, when this CARES Act goes away, and it was only instituted for a year, there still could potentially be 3 million people that might not be able to make their payments. And not only that, but there was about 500,000 people that were behind on payments that didn't even access the forbearance plan. So you really have about 3.5 or even close to 4 million people that once this forbearance plan is up, once the CARES Act is over, so long as it's not extended, they could be facing some very serious issues. And look, the majority of those are probably not going to end in foreclosure, but there's definitely going to be a large wave of foreclosures coming, probably 2021, early 2022. Next up, we have the price of houses. So the price increase leading up to the Great Recession in the 2008, 2007 timeframe was a little bit higher than it currently is now. However, with the extremely low interest rates, there has been bidding wars left and right, and pretty much every market in the United States has been extremely competitive with record-setting prices in many different areas. And extremely high prices can only last for so long. Real estate's always been cyclical, and the last time we had a real estate downturn was, really the Great Recession, 2007, 2009 timeframe. So we're basically due for one. What goes up eventually must come down. So in the next year or two, we're definitely going to see some type of price correction. Another factor that's just unique to this current crisis is that rents have been plummeting in large cities like San Francisco. Rents have been going down by 20 or 30%. People are looking for a little bit more space, but from the perspective of being a landlord, it's really tough right now. And also, being a renter, you might not have a job, so you might not be able to pay your rent, and you could face the threat of eviction. According to the US Census Bureau data, there's between $12 and $16 billion of renter debt. And that number is growing rapidly. So that's basically people not paying their rent, and also landlords not receiving any rent money. And this is going to have a massive ripple effect in terms of the rental properties, house prices, and it could lead to different foreclosures and really just a real estate mess, if you want to call it that. Real estate always lags behind a lot of these other economic indicators, but once all of this catches up, it could be pretty bad. The next factor is commercial real estate. And I don't even know where to start with commercial real estate because there's so many negative reports, negative stats coming out that it's really unprecedented.
Before the pandemic, San Francisco had the highest building occupancy rate in the country. And now most of the city's skyscrapers sit empty. The question is, how long will it stay that way?
You have major retailers like Neiman Marcus and countless other corporations that have been going out of business. I mean, when I just drive around my city, I see vacancies left and right. Citigroup recently did a report that showed the decline in value from many of these commercial properties was over 25%. The stock prices of REITs that own commercial properties are down around 40%. And actually, data centers and industrial REITs are actually doing pretty well thanks to Amazon. But according to CoStar, there's going to be over $126 billion of properties, commercial properties, that sell at a distressed price over the next 2 years. So we are going to see a wave of commercial properties that are selling at rock bottom prices, or in some cases maybe at foreclosure. Next up, we have the skyscraper stats, and this is more of an unofficial type of estimate, but a lot of old time real estate investors and real estate developers will tell you that once you start to see like 5, 10, 15 skyscrapers, in your city or just along the horizon, that's usually when it signals that a crash is coming. That's usually when they say, okay, we need to pull back a little bit and be a little bit more conservative. When you see all this overdevelopment. And I think there was a lot more overdevelopment during the 2007, 2008 timeframe. But if you look at your city and you just look at all the skyscrapers and construction, you can definitely make the argument that there's going to be much more of a supply than what the market can actually handle. So there you have it. There's a comparison between the 2007 crash and the upcoming real estate market crash. And just to summarize this video, look, we have much better underwriting standards and much better lending practices nowadays. However, with this unprecedented crisis with the pandemic, as well as record levels of debt, record levels of unemployment, record high prices, there's bound to be a downturn in the market. And I think it's going to happen within the next 6 to 12 months. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the 2007 crisis, but it's going to be pretty bad because we've never seen anything like this before. I know we say that for every recession, but it's best to be very conservative with your numbers. Look, you can still get great deals out there, but just be very conservative and always keep some reserves on hand. So thanks for watching this video, and comment in the comment section below what you think is going to happen or if you have any questions or anything, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, bye.